Okay, class. These are always my favorite lessons, the one at the end of the chapter, and not all teachers do these. A lot of people skip them, but they're my favorite because it shows that you understand the concepts that have been taught all during the unit and you can apply them to real world math problems. So it's math practice and problem solving. So we're using all the math we learned to help solve some problems. And Angie volunteers in the school library after school. The librarian gave her a stack of books and told her to use the number on each book to shelve it where it belongs. How can Angie arrange the books in order from least to greatest to make the shelving them easier? This is actually a real world problem that librarians actually do. They sort the books first by the greatest place value so they can get them into the different sections, and then within the sections they sort them into more detail. So this is a real world problem, and my daughter's a librarian and she uses this all the time. When Mr. Hokinson shelves his books, he uses the same process. I can look for and use the structure of the decimal place value system to solve problems. So, what patterns can I see and describe? How can I use the patterns to solve the problem? Can I see expressions and objects in different ways? And what equivalent expressions can I use? So, when we're going to sort these, they're all kind of written nicely for us on the page, and you can kind of use the page to help you out a little bit here. If you just make sure they all have the same number of digits, so I'm going to have 3 digits in decimal place value so I can more easily compare them. That kind of helps me a little bit. They all have 3s in the hundreds, they all have 2s in the tens, and they all have 3s in the ones. So we're going to really focus on the decimal place value. So we want to put them from least to the greatest. That color's not going to work now. Okay, so we're looking at, for this first book here, we're looking at 2.202. The second book is 0.130. The third book is 0.210. The fourth book is 0.233. We have 0.70 and 0.020. And I know they all start with 323. I didn't write that, but I can see they all start, and I double checked, they all do. So we're going from least to greatest. So now that we annex zeros on the couple of these books here, we annex the zeros so we can make sure we have all the place values filled in, the tenths, the hundredths, and the thousandths. Now I can see which is the smallest value. And if I starting with the tenths, I have 2, 1, 2, 2, 1, and a 0. So I can tell this book is going to be the smallest book. And get rid of that one. And then the next book, the next smallest book, I have 2, 1, 2, 2, 1. So it's going to be between the 0.130 and the 0.170. And I can tell that is going to be the next smallest book. The next smallest book, because I know 170 is bigger than 130. So 130. And now I've got 3 values. And notice systematically I'm crossing things out to eliminate as I go, to help organize my thoughts a little bit better. So now I've got 0.202, 0.210, and 0.233. And they all have 2s in the tenths place, so now I have to go to the hundredths place. I've got a 0, a 1, and a 3. I know this one is going to be the next smallest value. Now I've got just 2 left. So I have this one's my next, and then this is my largest book. So that's systematically using the structure of decimal place value to help me sort these books from least to greatest. And then when I put them on the shelves, they can all be in the right order. That is a real world problem that librarians deal with, every day. Mr. Hokinson, the public librarians, when they're organizing, and that is actually, it's called the Dewey Decimal System, the organization system they use, which you probably learned about that in digital literacy. Explain why 323 and 202 thousandths is less than 323 and 21 thousandths, even though 202 is greater than 21. Remember, this is not really, these are the digits, but they're not in place value. So remember our first value, it's 202 thousandths. Our second is 21 hundredths. And if we annex a zero, it's the same as saying 210 thousandths. So we have to remember we're comparing place value. So the first value has a 2 in the tenths, and the second value has 1 in the hundredths, and the first value has a 0. So we have to make sure we line them up in place value and annex a 0 whenever possible to be able to compare decimals. It's critical that you do that. Don't look at them as whole numbers. They are decimal values, and you need to show them in place value. So let's see what the next, and this, I know some kids do not like these. They are so wacky, but I love them because I love math and I love math puzzles. So analyze the chart. What do you notice that can help you complete the chart? Okay, so here's the number chart. And what do I notice about the chart? And what do I need to solve the problem? And can I use the structure of the decimal place value system to complete the chart? And of course I can. So what do I notice about the chart? How is it organized? I can go by columns and rows, look at it however I want. So I notice there's a lot of missing values, and I'm going to have to fill them in. So I want to look for the pattern here. So as I'm going down in place value, as I'm going down the chart here, I know the values are increasing. They're increasing, they're getting larger. They're getting larger as we go down. So if I use my column here, I have 1, this is 1 hundredth, this is 11 hundredths, 21 hundredths. So what do you think would come next? I have a 1, an 11, and a 21. I notice they all have 1s in the hundredths place. And I notice they all have 0s in the ones place. And I notice they're all increasing by 1 in the tens place. That's going to be a 3 there. So I can see my pattern now. So this row right here starts with 100th, 200th, 300th. Next I will have 400th. Then I will have, 500ths. It's hard to draw these. Then I will have 600ths. Then I will have 700ths, 800ths, 900ths. And what comes after 900ths? Well, after 900ths, if I want to add another hundredth to that, watch what happens. This is you'll see this in first in math. Adding decimals will get you, increase your goal index for the intermediate goal index, adding decimals. So this is a good little preview on that. So, and I also put something in MobyMax to help you with adding decimals. So 9 tenths plus 1 tenths, 9 plus 1 is 10, carry the 1. 1 plus 0 plus 0 is 1. So 9 tenths plus 1 tenths is 1 whole. So in this case, we have 9 hundredths. We're increasing by 1 hundredth. 9 plus 1 is 10. Carry the 1. So we wind up with 1 tenth, or we can say 10 hundredths. It'll be the same thing. So you just add decimals the way you add whole numbers. You make sure they're lined up by place value. Carry, regroup, and rename. So now let's take a look at our second row. We have 11, something, 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 15 hundredths, 16 hundredths, something, something, 19 hundredths. So if we notice we're going up, what's changing? We have 1 in the tenths in the whole row. What's changing is the hundredths place, and it's increasing by 1 hundredth. So just like we did above us, it's the same rule. So we're going to have 0.12, 0.13, 0.14, 0.15, 0.16, 0.17, 0.18, 0.19, and after 19 comes 20, or 0.2. The next row, it's the same thing. We're increasing by a hundredth. So we're adding 1 hundredth is what you could say our rule would be for this chart. So it's 0.22, 0.23, 0.24, 0.25, 0.27, 0.28, 0.29, and 0.30 or 0.3. Remember, they're equal to each other. And I'm just going to make it a 0.3 because the first anchor corner there is listing it as the tenths value. So I'm going to show it as a tenth and not a hundredth. And again, we're increasing by 100th, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, and that would be 40 or 4/10. So using structure to solve problems, looking to see what our value increase would be, knowing that it's increasing it's increasing going down and increasing going across. Be aware. And how can I solve this problem? As you read down, you'll see as you move down the columns, tenths increase by 1, by the hundredths stay the same. Moving from left to right, tenths stay the same, except for the number, while the hundredths increase by 1. So make sure you read over. You're looking for patterns. I looked for patterns. I used the patterns to help me solve and stay organized. I analyzed the patterns to see the structure in the table, and I break the patterns into simpler problems. So here's another one for you to do down here. And you can see we are again increasing in, if you take a look at the whole first row is done for you. So take a look at the numbers and see where the change is. The change is in the hundredths, and it's increasing by 1. So down here, we're going to be doing the same thing. So we're going to, and this is super tiny for me here. Let me see if I can make it bigger. No, I can't. I can't make it bigger when I have the tools on for Castify. So this would be 0.12, 0.13, 0.14, and so on. Write the missing numbers, explain how you use structure to find the last number in the bottom row. Moving down from 1/10, you increase the tenths by 1 for each row. So I notice the hundredths are staying the same in each row, and the rows are this way, and columns are this way. You need to learn those terms for math. So as I'm going across, I'm increasing by 1 in the hundredths place. So this is 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, and this would be 0.4, 40. So you can say moving down from 1 tenth increases the tenths by 1 for each row, writing 0.4 in the bottom row. So this would be our final anchor value. Okay. So we're using the structure of the table, the pattern. It's not random. It's very organized. I love math. It's nice and organized. And let's move on to the guided practice. Now, this is when the book gets a little wacky. So, and you're going to see this if you do the buddy work. There's some wackadoodle problems that look like this, where you're like, what the heck is that? That's not a chart. So what they've done is they've left out some of the boxes, and they're trying to see if you can logically figure out what's missing. Each of the grids is part of a decimal chart. So the previous page, we had the whole decimal chart. Now we're having just part of the chart. Describe the pattern for moving from a pink square to a green square. Then write the missing numbers. So if you notice, to go from a pink to a green, so we're going from the pink to the green. So what do we notice about those values? Then write the missing numbers. If we take a look at that, we'll see that the tenths increase by 1 and the hundredths increase by 1 to go from a pink to a green. So we're increasing them both. We're adding 11 hundredths to each value. Let's check to see if that works. So 0.55 plus 11 equals 0.66. So that did work. Let's double check that it works again. So if we go from a pink to a green, we have 0.75 plus 11 is 0.86. Yep, that works. So we can say our pattern is increase by 11 hundredths. And so to figure out what we would put in this next array, we're going to say 0.32 plus 11 hundredths is 0.43. 52 plus 11 hundredths is 0.63. And that will finish those little parts of the decimal chart. How can you use patterns to find the number that would be in the box below 0.52? So if we're looking to see what's in this missing area here, we can use our pattern by taking a look above it. Say we have 0.32, so this will be 0.42, 0.52, 0.62. 0.72. So we're increasing in the tenths there, and the hundredths are saying the same. So we're going to say it is 0.62 will be my answer. And how could you use the patterns? You can say the tenths is plus, or 0, let's say, plus 1/10, and the hundredths stay the same. Sorry, I'm going to write on her shoes here. So that's how we would write it out for someone if they needed to know what is the pattern and what do we notice. You're writing it in words. You can show it in numbers. And I also have some kids in the past when they're filling out these kind of charts. Sometimes they just like to fill in the empty spaces to help them really visualize what the patterns are. So you can do that too. And if you have a piece of loose leaf paper or notebook paper or a whiteboard, you can do that. So what I mean by that is when you see these wacky little tables like this that don't have the full number grid in, you can just notice, I'm looking at the pink here, 55 something, 75 something, 85. So I know 65 goes in here, 75, 85. 66 something, 86. So I know 76. So it's increasing in this direction by, and this would be 56. It's increasing in this direction by plus 100th, and it's increasing this direction by plus 1/10. So sometimes kids like to just write in those empty spaces to help them really see, what's going on. That would be a 96. All right. Now I've got to get off this because I'll be Zooming with you in a couple minutes. And you can see the independent practice. There's a couple questions you might want to, if you're still not sure what you're doing. Again, you can go into the buddy work, or you can take a look at the next page if you just want to work on what's in here in your book. That's fine as well. And there is a quick check to do for today, too. Have a good day.